Alright, so we took a look at how to install an Angular application using the CLI. Now I'm going to give you a second option, which is using the Quickstart. Now the Quickstart isn't really a tool, it's more of a boilerplate, it's more of a starting point, but it is used. It actually was used in the main documentation for Angular for a while. But what we're going to do is just go to github.com/angular/quickstart, and you can either use git to clone, you can use git clone and then this link here, or you can just download the zip file, which is what I'm going to do. Alright, so let's click download zip, and you can see it comes in a folder called Quickstart Master, so let's open that up. And we're going to click in that, and then here is the boilerplate for our application. So I'm going to also open up my projects folder. You can see we have our Angular app that we created with the Angular CLI. Now I'm going to create a new folder here, and I'm going to call it Angular app QS for Quickstart, and we'll do _QS. And then what I'll do is just bring all of this over into that folder. Alright, and then what we'll do is open Angular app QS with git bash. If you don't have git bash installed and you're on Windows, you can hold shift and do right click, and you can do open in command window. Alright, but we're going to use git bash. And of course, if you're on Mac or Linux, you can use your terminal. So from here, we're going to have to install the dependencies. Okay, so it's going to look at the package.json file, look at the dependencies, and then install them all. So we do that with npm install. Okay, we didn't have to run that with the CLI. It took care of that on its own. And while that's running, let's go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code. Alright, and I'm just going to open up the Quick Start folder, or our application folder with Visual Studio Code. So let's say open folder, and we're going to choose the Quick Start version here, select folder. Alright, let's see if that's still running. npm install is still running. But we can start to look at some of these files. So notice that there's a lot of similarities here. If you look at the source folder, it's almost identical to what was in the Angular CLI, with the addition of the system.js config files. Okay, so Angular CLI runs on Webpack to handle ES6 and compiling and stuff. Angular Quickstart actually uses system.js. Now, if we look at the package.json file that's in the root, you'll see there's a lot more scripts for testing and stuff. Angular CLI is much more compact. Now, to start this, we're going to do npm start, and what that does is it runs two of these other scripts. It runs build, actually build watch, and then it runs serve. Okay, so build is going to it's going to compile all your TypeScript. This TSC right here, this is TypeScript compiler. Now build watch is going to constantly run the TypeScript compiler, so that every time you save your TypeScript files, it's going to recompile. So that's what build watch does. And then serve runs the light server, which it takes care of being able to run your application on your local host in your browser. So npm start is going to run both of those together, but you can run them separately if you want. Alright, and then you have your end-to-end testing scripts and stuff like that. Now if we go down here, the Angular packages are the exact same. You see we have the compiler, the core, the forms and HTTP module, all that stuff, and it's all version 4.0.0, just like with the CLI. Okay, and then we go down here and you'll see there's system.js, reactive extensions, all the dev dependencies, which includes the light server, TypeScript, Karma testing, and all that stuff. So it's pretty similar to the CLI package. Alright, so let's close that up, and if we go over here, let's see, that's not really, this stuff really isn't important. Let's look in the source folder. So if we look at index.html, it's pretty similar to the CLI, except it does include a couple more things. It does have our system.js and the system.js config. This stuff isn't included because, or isn't included in the CLI because the CLI uses Webpack, which is a little cleaner in my opinion. And there's other minor differences, like take note of the main app component directive here. It's my app, and in the CLI it was app root. And that stuff really doesn't matter. I mean, you could call it whatever you want. It's just going by whatever you use right here. But just realize that there are some changes like that, or there are some differences. But at its core, it's the same thing. Okay, if we look at app module TS, you'll see it brings in ng module and browser module, brings in the main app component. We have the ng module directive with the imports and all that. And like I said, I'll get into what this is later on. Okay, and it uses the app module class. And if we look in app component TS, it is, instead of using a separate HTML file for the template, they're just putting it in template. Okay, and they're just putting the template string right in it. Now, if you're building an actual application, I would suggest using a separate HTML file. But for what we're going to be doing, for at least for the first few sections, I'm going to be doing this so that you guys can see exactly what's in the template and in the class and then in the component at the same time, so I don't have to keep going back and forth to the HTML. But later on, when we're actually building an application, we'll do it the other way. Okay, I'm just trying to do things the easiest way possible for you guys to learn. Alright, so that's going to be it for this video, guys. Like I said, we're going to be using the CLI throughout the course. If you feel more comfortable with the quick start for some reason, that's absolutely fine. You can use that. But in the next video, we're going to talk a little bit more about TypeScript before we actually get into writing some code.